This is the Divorce Curious podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mitchell. If you're here, your life and marriage might kind of suck right now, and I've been exactly where you are. At Divorce Curious, we're going to say the quiet parts out loud. We're going to sit in the anger, confusion, and disappointment that you're feeling and talk about what it looks like to go through the before, during, and after of being divorce curious. I'm glad you're here. Hey, welcome, Divorce Curious fam. I am super excited today because it's not just me that you get to listen to. It is actually me plus an amazing, badass business builder, entrepreneur, life experience haver, my friend Aimee. Aimee, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, and man, oh man, a story that it is, huh?
Oh, Lisa, it's such a pleasure to get to chat with you. Thank you for having me.
We always have the best talks.
Well, I hope so.
So, Aimee, I would love for you to just kind of introduce yourself to the Divorce Curious crew. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of your story here in a minute, but I want them to know a little bit about you first. So, what is it that you like to spend your time doing? What is it that brings you joy, makes you happy, gets you out of bed on the other side of the things that have happened in your story?
Well, Lisa, I am thrilled to be on a podcast. I have my own podcast also. That's one of the things that gets me out of bed is doing podcasts and having the opportunity to talk to people. I own a company called What Friends Do, and we help people through major life disturbances. And I started that a long time ago. I'd had some life things happen before, like I'd lost my dad. We'd lost really good friends of the family. That's one of the reasons that I started my company. But when you start your business, sometimes you don't always know that you're going to need it. And I think over the past year, it's been a really not so subtle reminder as we get into everything that's going on, not so subtle reminder that life happens. Life happens when you're not expecting it. And that's one of the things, again, that I kind of focus on in my company and what we do with other people. So also I have two amazing kids and they make me really, really happy. And then I have great friends. And those are the other reasons that I keep going with everything that I'm doing.
I know you have a very full and busy life, and I've benefited from your brilliance and experience when it comes to building technology products, which is another big part of both of our lives, is kind of figuring out how do you build a technology company? How do you raise money as a female founder? Like, that's a whole nother podcast, but I know we've both been in the trenches there. And then I think when we were talking about what this episode was going to kind of look and feel like, just the fact that there are so many people that right? You know parts of their story. You make a lot of assumptions about people. And the things that are going on in the background are sometimes just completely unknown, unsuspected, because so many people, and I think women in particular that are business owners and moms, and you have to keep the plates spinning even when you've just been hit by a truck. You still don't get to drop the plates. And I think that's one of the things, and when we were talking and preparing to bring this story to the Divorce Curious audience, that really stuck with me is the amount of plate spinning that I saw you doing. In the peripheral part, had no idea that any of these other circumstances were going on with you, which makes me feel like a really shitty friend for not being more clued into the experience that you were having and being, frankly, self-focused, which everybody's spinning a lot of plates. But I think it's a good challenge for me to be look up and check in and see what's going on.
I think one of the biggest things that I learned, and I'm clearly still emotional around, was how much shame I had at first around my divorce and failure I felt. And I kind of hid for a little while, right? But it wasn't just the shame and the failure. It was It was the grief. It was the overwhelm. It was the reshaping myself. And how do I position myself? I didn't even want to go to my regular grocery store because I didn't want to have to interact with people and for the fear of breaking down. Right. And so I hear you when you say, gosh, I should have looked up and I didn't even know you were going through this. I didn't want anyone to know I was going through this. Right. And I've seen this with a lot of friends who have gone through divorce. And sometimes you just kind of hole away. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what I needed to handle. And I just went kind of in hibernation for a little bit.
I relate to that. I haven't, as of yet, shared a whole lot of the logistics around my story, but I'm legit the person who packed a U-Haul and moved away and didn't tell anybody. That was me for very similar reasons. It's what do I even do? And I'm so ashamed, and I'm a type A overachiever. I don't fail at things, and then I fail at the most important thing, right? It's just so much. So I 100% understand why it's easier to just kind of disappear or sink into the bushes or the wallpaper or just hope people don't notice or don't ask or just try to keep up enough appearances that you can get by without tipping anybody off that you're in the middle of this ginormous life crisis. And I think one of the things I would love for you to share a little bit, Aimee, is you kind of had, I always call it, I imploded my life. I blew everything up all at the same time. And I feel like you kind of had, in a very short period of time, some things acted upon you. Most things acted upon you. Some things just timing wise of the normal cycle of your life and family. But can you just, to whatever degree you want to, bullet point out kind of the pile of suck that you found yourself wading through all at the same time?
Yeah, I'm prepared to share all of this. I just still sometimes, as I am now more than a year out, even though I look back at it. So, and I get a little emotional. So
we love you for that. People that can, and I use the term bullet point, right? But it is an emotional thing. It's hard to talk about. And I think the more we kind of sanitize it or try to make it pretty or try to just talk in sentences, it just doesn't honor the level of feeling that comes with all of this. So however you need to show up.
Well, thank you.
Girls, show up. You're welcome here.
I want to start by saying sometimes I feel like it's mic drop, mic drop, mic drop. But I preface it by saying I'm so happy now. So as I share all of this, I'm on the other side. So the quick bullet point stories were I found myself moving my youngest into college, becoming an empty nester with my husband. And a couple of days later, needed to go visit my daughter. She was out in Denver and I was in Indianapolis, and I was driving back and forth. On my way home from that drive, I had some pretty significant pain. Ended up calling the doctor when I got back to Indianapolis, and pretty quickly over the course of less than 48 hours, found out that I had a tumor. And as I was coming home from getting some testing done, I walked in the house and my husband said, I think we need to talk about us. I want a divorce.
This was testing to basically find out if you were facing a cancer diagnosis or not, right? And he was aware that you were going for this testing. Okay.
Yeah. And to be clear, things weren't great with us. I didn't know that we were at this point of let's get a divorce right now. So I'm pretty sure my first response to him was I'm having surgery in 5 days. Can we wait to talk about this?
Seems like a reasonable request to me, honestly. Yeah.
We had been married for 23 years. I was can we just wait a couple more days on this, please? It ended up that everything was benign. That was amazing. He did sign the divorce papers that day and then moved out a couple days later. We were in a really big, beautiful dream home that I didn't need when it was just me. And quite frankly, I didn't need it and I couldn't afford it on my own. And he pretty much said, like, here's enough money for the next 2-ish months. Get the house sold. I'm in our other house. And he helped with the packing some. But, there's just a different level of things. So I had to wait a couple of weeks to put the house up for sale because I was still
recovering from major surgery.
From a major surgery, which again, benign, everything is great, no big deal.
Right. But still, that's trauma on your body and the emotional stress of it could be or it might be.
So we had all those things. I ended up getting my house up for sale and then sold the house and got everything packed up, moved out, and the divorce was final, essentially. And then that was over the course of about 3.5 months.
It seems like an impossible amount of things to deal with in such a short period of time. Does that feel like a before and after, like, line of demarcation, a record scratch kind of thing, as our friend Kara Kavinsky says? Do you feel like that's one of those, like, that will forever be a before and after or a point of demarcation in your story?
100%. 100%. Probably the saddest I've ever been in my life, the most shattered I had ever been in my life. I used some imagery as I was going through it, and it's of this beautiful Japanese bowl that is a lot of pieces that all get put back together and soldered together with gold. And I just had to use that imagery almost every day to be like, I know I'm totally shattered, but I'm going to come back beautiful. And all of those breaks are what makes it beautiful. But shit, it was so hard. I'm really, really lucky because I have some pretty amazing people in my life. And I was really insular and I didn't let many people in. But those people who were in were all in and helped me so much. I mean, I had girlfriends who I would literally call almost in the middle of the night, and I was like laying on the floor crying because I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I had other girlfriends one girlfriend who came over and she's like, we're just getting out of bed and going downstairs for coffee today. That's all we're doing right now. You can do it. Because how do you do it? Like, it's hard, but do I look at that as like a life-altering time? Yes. Because also now, I didn't know what a gift it was.
There's some very stark parallels in our stories. I mean, circumstances were different, logistics are different, but I think that feeling of, how is this my life? Like, how is this my life? Like, I remember when I had moved, I ended up at a short time back with my parents. With my daughter was young. She was a toddler, like preschool age. And I'm in basically the guest room at my parents' house reading like the Twilight books and on a Saturday night, and my daughter's in the room next to me. And I just remember having this moment of, so I'm not a big feels person. I try to stay out of my feels, or I used to really try to stay out of my feels because, like, who's got time for that? But I remember just like breaking, like laying in bed with my book at like midnight, looking around my surroundings and thinking, how in the hell is this even my life? There's so many people that are well-intentioned and try to support you and try to show up for you. But I feel like unless you have had that moment where you're like, a week ago, I was living in a big, beautiful house and my family was intact and everybody thought everything was fine. And now, oh my God, like, what is life? How is this my life?
I had 4 months when I joke, but I was living out of my car for 4 months. I wasn't really, because I had places to stay, but I was homeless, right? Like, I didn't have a house. I did not have a home for me. And so, I had most of my life in storage. I had some things that I thought that I might need to have access to stored at my sister's house. Anything that I was going to need on a daily basis, I just had in my car and literally put probably 4,000 miles on my car over the course of 4 months. And how was this my life?
I feel like that was like if there was going to be a t-shirt, right? Like a slogan t-shirt for that period of time, it would just be like, how is this my life? Like, this doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't make sense, but I couldn't be having the life that I'm having now.
Right. And I know we're going to skip a million things in the meantime, but like that's the part I think is as equally as baffling as how is this my life when you are in it. And then on the other side of it, you get to say with gratitude and with joy and with happiness and optimism, like, how is this my life? Right? Like it's the same words, but a totally different energy and sentiment and meaning. And I love, like, Aimee, I am so happy and I feel your sincerity when you say, I couldn't have this life now if I didn't go through that pain then. And how do you feel about life now on the other side?
Oh, so the only regrets that I have are that I should have been the one to file for divorce instead of my ex-husband. And I say that only a little bit jokingly. And then my kids have said this one to me, and I should have done it a long time ago, probably 10 years earlier. But I didn't. Looking back, really should have. Really, really should have.
That is the most common regret that divorced women have, by the way. Like out of all the things they could regret and all the pain that comes with it, the number one regret historically, and it's not even close, is that they should have done it sooner.
Totally should have done it sooner. And I don't ever want to wish divorce on anyone. And I don't want to advise people that this is what they should do if they don't want to do it. But if they're considering it, if I had known, there are things I would have done to prepare, especially because my ex-husband and I had really significant income discrepancies. And I could have just been a little more prepared.
I think that's such a great point, because there are really kind of the whole catalyst behind Divorce Curious and the community and the resources and the podcast is that exact thing, right? Like, I am very clear that I am not an advocate of divorce. Like, it is terrible. It is devastating, will wreck you financially and emotionally, and will give you more guilt as a mom than you've ever felt in your entire life, right? Like, I would never recommend or try to persuade somebody into going the route of divorce, because I've done it and it's terrible. What I am wanting to do, and what I think your story will help people think through, is if you are thinking about it, that means that there is something that is not fulfilling you, or you have a level of unhappiness, right? So you deserve to explore every option. You need to make the next best decision for yourself. And if you at least mentally walk through, what would it look like? What should I expect? What tools, what resources, what professionals do I need to connect? And my divorce was not a surprise, and I was still surprised by just the amount, just what I did not know. What I did not know I should even think about or prepare for or plan for or budget for, right? Like, it was just like insult to injury. And that's why I'm so passionate about having people like you tell your story and really give the good, the bad, the ugly, the biggest surprises, what you wish you could have prepared for, because it's already terrible, but it doesn't have to be terrible and as hard as it is when you just don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And I am so excited for you that you have this resource available to people. But I also think, as I've watched other friends go through this, every situation's just a little different. And my business is about helping people through major life events and major life disturbances. There are also some pretty standard things that everyone needs to know, right? And then knowing that everything's nuanced.
What would be your short list, Aimee, of the things you were most surprised by or what you wish you would have known more or been more prepared for as someone who may be divorce curious or thinking through or planning for what that might look like if that is the next best step for them? What I know the list is long because it's incredible how much you need to know, but like, is there like one or two things that you think, man, if I would have just done that differently or had I just known about this, it would have really changed my experience?
I'd like to not really tangentially answer this, but I would like to answer it by saying, I think there's a lot of things that you can do that are going to be good for you, whether or not you decide to get divorced or not. Right? So some of those things, like one of them is like being super, super financially literate. Get all of your finances figured out in order, make a spreadsheet. Oh, it makes my skin crawl thinking about it.
Right? Not the fun stuff.
It's not the fun stuff, but get it all down. Have a list of all of your assets. And by all of your assets, I mean all of your fucking assets. Every single thing. Have it on there. This is not going to hurt you by doing this. This does not mean you are going to get a divorce. It means you're ready either way. Have that list. Know every bank account. Make sure you know every bank account before you get divorced. Because the minute that those divorce papers get sent in, everything is frozen. And you don't have access and you don't have that stuff done. Pay off any bills that you can get paid off. And just be super, super financially literate. And then know who your legal professionals might be. Just talk to your friends about their divorce lawyers, right? You're probably going to need one. They are not cheap. And make sure you like them. Make sure they respond to you in a way that you want to have them respond to you. But I want to go back to one other piece of advice that I don't know that I necessarily did, but I'd like to have other people consider. And that is just work on yourself as much as you can. The happier you can be, the stronger you can be, the stronger you can be during your divorce, after your divorce, even if you don't get divorced. There's no loss to this, right? There's no downside. And so if that means finding whatever professionals you need to find to help you think through this, help you walk through as you're going through it. Again, no downside.
You're going to be happier, healthier, stronger, more mentally sound, no matter what. And that benefits you singled or coupled.
Correct. And sometimes it's helpful to have that professional and not just your girlfriends, right? Because I love my girlfriends. There's no way I would get through life without them. My mom and my sister, they're my people. But we're human, and they all had relationships with me. They all had relationships with my ex-husband. So it's just different than a professional who can maybe give advice differently.
Yeah, I think having that objective third party, preferably somebody who's experienced in the circumstances that you're currently finding yourself, right? That gives you, because here's what I found, and I don't know if it felt similar to you or not, but I felt like in the situations where there were, we'll say, emotional stakeholders, right? Like friends or family or whatever, like I found myself kind of catering to their emotional response instead of just being able to like share mine. Because you don't want to burden people. You don't want to make them worry. You don't want their judgment, right? Like everybody's got a big damn opinion. And then everybody tells you all the terrible things they thought about the other person for the last 10 years, but they never told you before. And they were like, it can get so messy when there's that entrenchment.
Well, and then what if you decide to change your mind and you've done something, right? Like, I don't know. And it's just good to have that objective third party. But what I would say is like, ask your friends for recommendations for these people and just start getting ready with all of that. I think the preparation doesn't have to be because you're necessarily going to get divorced, but it doesn't hurt to have all of these things on hand anyway.
I agree, because like the phrase I always turn to is, fear makes more decisions than data ever does, right? But the only way you minimize fear is by getting the data to then give you the confidence and clarity to make the best decision, right? And so if not, if you're making decisions from fear, and you will make decisions from fear or frustration or exhaustion or whatever, but as much as you can do when you do have the breathing room as part of your, even prior to your decision making, like just exploratory. It's not a bad thing to have information you then never have to use. But it sure sucks when you need to do something and you don't know or you don't have the information you need, because that's when fear hijacks you, adrenaline hijacks you, emotional response, you're triggered by your ex, right? Like whatever it is, the wheels fall off so fast if you don't have that preparation.
So fast. And just the stress of having to look for everything while you're going through the emotional stuff. And if you already have it and you already have those data points, this is one of the things, and so many people told me this and I was in it and I couldn't internalize it, but it's just a business transaction at that point.
I know. I have heard it. Like that has been something that has been so like just drilled into me. And honestly, one of my regrets is that, I mean, I negotiate for a living, right? I know how to do it. But when it is like, there's a point, your exhaustion gets weaponized against you and you start sacrificing sound business decisions for peace. You just want peace. You just want a finite. You just want to be
done.
Right. And so many people know that and weaponize it because especially if you're still, on the mom side and you're still taking care of everything and you're dealing with the divorce, right? Like for some partners, when they leave, the divorce becomes their only responsibility or the only thing they have to put their time on, right? And the other partner is drowning on all the other things their life takes to run and a divorce. And it's energy is a finite resource, man. But yes, it is a business decision. And even when you're exhausted and emotional and you want peace, like once a deal is done, it is so hard to go back and modify and right the ship when you do have energy to like finally be mad about things or to finally have the energy to fight or really even just pay attention to some of the things you didn't have the bandwidth for in the moment.
Which is one of the other reasons why getting a really good lawyer is so critical, because they know the questions to ask.
And you have to follow their advice.
And I had my financial planner give me some other really good advice too. And that was like, look back over the past 6 months to see where the money's gone. Because
people never get more creative when it comes to hiding assets when it comes time for disclosure.
Right.
You have to almost be an investigator or hire a forensic auditor or something to figure stuff out, because the person you marry is not the person you divorce. And the way that person manages finances while things are good is not how they move when things are bad.
And they're probably going through emotion too. And they might not make the most rational decisions. I'm trying to give my ex the benefit of the doubt from a couple of things that he did that I'm still shocked by. Things that I was like, really? I can't believe you did that.
You want to think no, they wouldn't. Yeah, they might. They might, and they probably did. So you have to assume, I'm all about assuming positive intent. As a standard operating procedure in my life, I assume positive intent until I have evidence. The forensic interviewer side of me is until you have evidence to the contrary, you assume positive intent. That does not apply here. You need to work from suspicion first and then let them prove that it's not. And I hate that, but that's so real.
And it's sad and it's hard, especially when you have built a life with someone. And I had trusted him with so many things, right? And then it didn't occur to me that he took my wedding ring and I couldn't find it for months. And I was moving, so I had hidden things so that when the house was showing, it wasn't. And I just assumed it had fallen into a drawer. I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't wearing it. So it's not like I was looking for it every day kind of thing. But I couldn't find it. And then literally the day we were moving out of our house or the day before we were moving out of our house, I said something to my daughter. I was like, is there any chance you've seen this? It's just kind of nagging at me that I can't find it. She's like, oh, Dad told me he took it 2 months ago. And I was mind blown. I was like,
oh, right. You're like, what else have I missed?
So what else have I missed?
Anymore?
And what else has he done that I thought that I could trust him with and I couldn't anymore, right? And just weird things that I was like, didn't occur to me, right? Just didn't occur to me because they're not the person you were married to before.
Right. You're the person you were married to when it was good would never think to mess with your property or take something sentimentally valuable to you or that you may want to give to your daughter, right? Like who knows? But, and then it's rationalized somehow as if it made sense that happened, right? And then you feel like you're going crazy, which is, again, things that would never happen to the person you married, but happens with the person that you divorced. I don't share that or affirm that experience that you had to fearmonger or bash anybody. It's just strictly a data point. Like I am so big on data points. It's just something you hope isn't part of your story, but it might be. So take an inventory, videotape your possession, like whatever you have to do to keep yourself from feeling like you're going crazy later, do it now and safeguard it.
Okay, so you've taken a video of it or you've done whatever and you don't need it, then delete it. Great. You do not have to review that. And I didn't mean to share that in any way other than things that I just never expected. And did I do things like that? Maybe. I mean, I was pretty perfect, but for some reason we got divorced and it's rarely one-sided.
Right? It's like, maybe I own part of this problem, but that doesn't feel as good to say.
It doesn't feel as good to say.
But I think your point, like, thank you, first of all, for sharing that, right? Like, it does not feel great to have to share a story that your ex jacked your wedding ring out from under your nose, right? Like that's not unusual. It might not be a wedding ring. It might be something else. But the amount of stories that I hear and the things I experience myself, people are not their most amazing, logical, kind selves. People will legit break the law in a divorce, like just because they're emotional and not even really thinking about the repercussions. Like people, I think there's a little bit of like, you kind of lose your shit. Everybody kind of loses their shit, but you don't know how it's going to manifest.
And every day is a little different, right? Especially when you're in it.
Yeah, it's hard to be rational when you're emotionally hijacked every day, whether by some external force or just some data point or just your own damn feelings of trying to figure out how the heck this is your life.
And I got pretty lucky in the sense that like, sometimes I look at my friends who went through divorce and I still have friends going through divorce and my kids were out of the house. And that made it so much easier in some regards. But yeah, in other regards, they couldn't see days that I was having a good day. Because sometimes you do have good days. And then they also didn't get the chance to see the rebuilding that happens after. And I do want to just share that my life is so great now. And I say that like, I feel like I'm whispering. Right. I'm not allowed to say it.
You're kind of surprised by that. But I think that, Aimee, when you think about somebody listening to this right now who is just in the trenches, and it seems like I remember thinking my mantra became like, it has to end eventually. The paper has to get signed because for mine took, I think, almost 2 years beginning to end for a myriad of reasons. And it's not like even a day or a moment. That's not even getting the paperwork signed or getting something settled. To me, that isn't when it felt like it was done or like I was on the quote unquote other side. Almost like a daily improvement. Like you just feel yourself getting a little stronger, getting a little more emotionally neutral, getting another piece of data or another resource or finding another person to support you and uplift you. And it really is like this, at least for me, it was like this accumulation of better things, right? Accumulation of better days, accumulation of more emotional space and more feelings of happiness versus sadness or stress, right? It was this weird, slow, like it seemed like the divorce was like, boom, right? It was like car crash. Like you just had the moment of impact. And then the getting to the other side or the I'm good now side is like It's a slow incremental, like sometimes you don't even notice it. But when you look back in the distance, it's like, oh my God, I'm so happy now. I'm so good now. And it like almost kind of surprises me sometimes still that I'm good. You just get good again. And I know it seems so trite and so like, oh, well, great, Yahoo for you bitches. But like I'm in the trenches.
And when you're in the trenches, it fucking sucks. Like there's no other way. Sorry, you can delete my bad words.
No, this is say what you need to say,
so
please.
Hard. And yeah, and it's not like the divorce is final and everything is great. No, I will say the day my divorce was finalized, my sister, who is like my very best friend, went and got me a cake that said, "Welcome to the Aimee era." And it was magical. And it is, but you have to relearn yourself. And I'm still doing that.
You're not the same person. Foundationally at your core have shifted. And it can be a beautiful alchemy of like reinforcing the good parts of you. But it is something to be celebrated. Like I love that your sister took and created that moment and acknowledged you, right? Because you're not the same. Like nobody comes out of it the same way that they went into it. It's just not, I don't believe it's some sort of like principle of chemistry or something that I feel like you're altered, right? And that doesn't mean bad or damaged. It just means you're different.
My divorce has given me such an opportunity to grow that I didn't know I needed, didn't know I wanted, didn't know I could do. And I mean, I feel like I'm smart. The sun just came in. I'm like,
I know. I'm like, happy. You literally just lit up. I love it. If anybody's watching this on video, like literally her whole face just illuminated.
I know. I mean, the sun just hit differently, but it kind of feels like that. But there's some days that are still weird and hard and I get in funks about things. So don't think that every time you see I'm like, yeah. But it's different.
But you would have weird, hard days even if you hadn't.
Oh, yeah. But now it's just growth that I couldn't have done before.
Beautiful. It doesn't get any better than that. I got nothing to say, but congratulations. And I love to see you happy and continuing to get the Aimee era fully established and thriving in the way that you want it to be. Again, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. Like it is never lost on me how much bravery and courage it takes and really what a heart to serve others it takes to come on a podcast like this and be like, hey, here's the deepest, darkest moments I've ever had in my whole life. And I'm going to just take you there in hopes that this might either just let you know there's somebody in the trenches with you or help you think of something as you're figuring out your next best step. So thank you for your generosity of your story and your heart with us. And I know people are going to want to know how to hear more, how to connect more, and where to find your beautiful business that you run.
Most ironic part of this, I find, is, so I mentioned earlier, I have a podcast. It's called Kitchen Chats with Aimee Kandrac. And I did 2 seasons of it. It's called Kitchen Chats because when a major thing happens in life, I call my friends, we sit in the kitchen and we figure out what's next. And as I finished my 2nd season, I made plans for my 3rd season that should have been released a year ago. And that season topic was major life transitions.
Wow. Funny how that just happened to line up for you.
Because I knew I was coming up with some. So that's going to be released pretty shortly. And we're talking about kind of how it happened to me and the life transitions that I was dealing with. And then the importance of your friends and your team and your people around it. So I've got that. I just released a book this summer that people can find that is a guide for helping friends who are going through major life events.
Amazing. Because who isn't? It's not always divorce, right? There's lots of things that can run us over while we're spinning our plates, and having tools and resources and a plan is amazing.
And sometimes it all happens at once.
But then you find yourself one day saying, how is this my life? In a good way. We'll link everything up in the show notes so you can find Aimee's podcast and her book and get connected with her and more of her story. And I mean, I think my biggest takeaway, well, I have a couple of them, right? The biggest takeaway is preparation is key. The more you know, the easier a terrible thing can feel as you move through it. So get curious, start building your resources. It's better to be prepared and not need them than need them and not have them.
Well, you might need them for other reasons anyway.
Right. Maybe your friend starts going through something and then you're like, here, look at all the things I've already figured out for you and I can help you. Yeah. So I'm a big believer that research and preparation saves you a lot of pain and suffering. And then, just keeping in mind that people do some crazy things when they are in the heat of the moment. So having a good inventory on your finances, on your property, things that are great to have and know and have a really good handle on, whether you end up ever needing to know all of that or not. Get curious, do your research. And then I think the third is having those friends, those people, those support around you that can have those kitchen chats, that can get you out of bed to go down and make it for coffee. And that's enough of a win. And they're going to walk in that with you. And hopefully everyone listening to this has those people. You got a picture of somebody's face or people's face in your mind when we talk about that type of support. And if not, I hope, you'll plug in more to the Divorce Curious community and let us be in that space for you.
And you never know who's going to come in as angels into your life when this is going on. And let those people come in, because sometimes they've got experience that's going to help you that you didn't even know about.
I love it. All right. We're going to welcome in our angels, the people that are walking through this with us. And Aimee, I'm glad that you had them. I'm glad that you're now choosing to be one for people that are listening to this that don't have their own. So thank you for making people a little bit braver and letting them borrow your courage through your story. See that you can celebrate your era afterwards. Cake optional, but always preferred, right? If there's an opportunity for cake.
I would even say that's one of the non-optional activities, but whatever.
Always cake. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Divorce Curious Show. Again, I'm your host, Lisa Mitchell. I hope to see you everywhere, but specifically at divorcecurioushelp.com. If you want to join the community, help get connected to your angels like Aimee. Subscribe, share the podcast if you know somebody who is in it, somebody who is just in it, thinking about going in it, coming out of it and looking to celebrate it. This really is for everybody. So again, thank you, Aimee, for joining us today. Until next time, stay curious, friends.